It's the kind of day you cross your fingers and hope the fires don't get started, which has some Coloradans asking about all those burn piles you see sitting around this time of year. Firefighters from a department in the foothills tell us, don't worry, they're there on purpose.
9 News reporter Jennifer Meckles is here to explain why.
Yeah, guys, you've got smoke in the air from the West Coast. You've got red flag alerts locally. It's impossible to ignore this just constant sense of dread around fire risk in Colorado in the summertime. Well, Evergreen Fire Rescue said they've also got people who are starting to reach out to them to ask about these burn piles that people think they've just left abandoned around town, seemingly. They said, no, hang on a second. This is actually part of our wildfire mitigation strategy, and they wanted a chance to explain.
We are along Highway 103 west of Bergen Park, and a chunk of open space owned by the city and county of Denver.
Above Evergreen, this section of forest is mitigated. Thinner trees with burn piles dotting the ground.
But we want those to stay. These are on a 2-year, 3-year plan. We're going to get rid of these.
Einar Jensen is the risk reduction coordinator for Evergreen Fire.
There are hundreds, if not thousands, of burn piles scattered throughout our jurisdiction, and probably tens of thousands of piles across the state of Colorado and all the western states.
Jensen and his team have seen the social media chatter, people growing more anxious about piles like these left to sit. But he says, generally, this is the strategy.
It takes a couple of years for these larger trees and the branches to dry out. Then when we get to the next closest burn season, so over the winter, when there's at least 6 inches of snow on the ground, then agencies come back in and in a far more managed situation, burn off the individual piles. And then the nutrients are able to get back into the soil. We choose days where the smoke disperses into the atmosphere rather than down to the road or down to the neighborhoods.
But isn't a pile of wood on the ground a risk too? Jensen says better on the ground than in the treetops.
When the fire in the dense forest gets to this mitigated area, the fire drops down into the surface fuels and the intensity drops, and now firefighters can deal with it to protect those other piles of fuel in our community, the homes, the businesses, the schools, and the infrastructure. This process does take a long time. It reduces risk, it does not eliminate risk, and we certainly understand that the visual change can cause that anxiety itself.
Einar says just hauling out wood, chipping it, that's not just as simple as it might sound to those of us who don't really know and understand this whole process. He said it can also increase the carbon footprint. And again, the idea of keeping them there on the forest floor and burning that wood can also then release nutrients back into the soil. But guys, he says, listen, he gets it. It's scary to see that stuff just lying around and you're thinking, oh my gosh, could that not catch fire? Are we creating problems here? So he just was kind of hoping to maybe answer some of those questions and maybe reduce the anxiety a little bit.